Welcome to the Ketones and Coffee Podcast with Lawrence Manaig, where we explore the ketogenic lifestyle and how it can improve your physical and mental health. Each week, we bring you valuable insights and advice from experts to help you on your journey to a healthier lifestyle. This episode is brought to you by BasicKetogenicLifestyle.com, where Lawrence coaches individuals with depression to reverse their symptoms and achieve a healthier, happier life using an evidence-based approach. So sit back, relax, and join us as we dive deep into the world of ketones and coffee. Subscribe to the Ketones and Coffee Podcast today and never miss an episode.
I'm so excited for this. Stick around because our guest today is Karla Mans Giroux, a holistic health coach with a remarkable list of accomplishments. She holds certifications from the Wisdom of the Whole Coaching Academy and the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches. She is also a certified radical remissions workshop facilitator and speaker, specializing in inspiring and educating those on a cancer journey, as well as individuals seeking prevention, general health, and longevity. Furthermore, she is a co-director at the Radical Remissions Project, where she plays a crucial role in facilitating the coach training program. She is also one of the speakers of the upcoming Cancer Revolution Summit happening from September 21st to 26th. Karla, welcome to the Ketones and Coffee Podcast.
Thanks. It's so great to be here.
I'm glad I can bring someone with your expertise on my show because hope is something that can get lost in event of a cancer diagnosis, like I mentioned earlier. And we found that comfort in stories, and they give us a lot of hope. And you've also managed to thrive despite the circumstances. But if you would, I would like to start, Karla, with your story. Let's tell our audience how that led you to your path today.
Sure. Yeah. So my cancer story, my journey back to health, it began in 2003 with an early stage cancer diagnosis. And it was breast cancer. I went through a mastectomy, chemotherapy, radiation, 5 years of hormone blocking drugs. I was 37 years old at the time. My kids were 2 and 5. It was pretty devastating, but it was also kind of over and done within 9 months to a year, right? Other than taking that med. And being the age I was, with the family being so young, I just wanted to get back to living my life and get back to my career and building my career. And I didn't really make any permanent changes for my health because I thought I lived a healthy life. And I went through a pretty much conventional only treatment plan. I did some acupuncture and a little bit of what you might consider alternative or holistic, but not a lot. And that was 2003. Didn't know a lot, didn't really have a lot of access to internet and things. So anyway, I went back to living my wonderful life. And it was 11 years later when I experienced a recurrence. Cancer had metastasized to my bones. So that second diagnosis was the one that really threw me for a loop. Not that the first one didn't. Nobody expects cancer. We all say, oh, I lived a healthy life. Cancer just shows up. But when it shows up a second time, it's like, damn it, I thought I was done, especially after hitting my 10-year mark. And so with that new diagnosis, metastatic to the bones, that's stage 4. That's pretty devastating. Your first thought, of course, of any cancer diagnosis is, how soon am I dying, right? Like, this is it. But I was blessed with a conventional oncologist who told me this is a chronic disease we can manage. So I decided I was going to manage the hell out of it. And I immediately changed a lot of things. So mine is a hormone receptor positive breast cancer. So it can be managed with hormone blocking drugs. But I think a big part of my success is my mindset and my healthy habits, the changes that I made for body, mind, and spirit. And with that initial diagnosis in December of 2014, I made some pretty radical changes. My diet was the big one, the first one. Cleaning out the toxins in my home, in my beauty care products, in my life, right? I took 3 months off work from a very big international, global travel, stressful job. And I really focused on my health and healing. And that's where the journey began.
Man, that just hearing the word cancer for me, especially your doctor saying you have cancer, just puts fear in a lot of us, right? I can only imagine how devastating that is.
Yeah, it immediately puts you into that fight or flight, that stress response, right? You're immediately in fear, and it's hard to get out of that fear. And that's a big part of what I, as a holistic health coach, help people do. Like, we need to make friends with our fear, because fear is useful, right? You want fear to show up in your life if there is a truck about to run you down, right? So we don't want to push fear away too much. But when fear is there all the time and you're in that stress response, your body can't heal. So you really need to figure out, how do I maybe not make friends with fear? Eventually, maybe you can, but just how do I get a handle on it? And how do I get myself back into that relaxation response where I can heal?
How does one not fall into depression at that point?
That's a challenge, right? And that definitely takes some work, because there are a lot of people who do find themselves in depression, and help is needed, and not just help from a coach, but help from a therapist. I firmly believe that every human being on the planet should be in therapy. We have all had trauma in our life. If you had a childhood, you've had trauma. And you might not think about those little things as traumatic. Some of us have had big traumas, right? Whether it's abuse or violence or whatever it might be. Those people know that they need help, right? But everybody needs a little bit of help. And there's no shame in getting that help and finding a therapist or someone that you can talk to and work through it with. There are things that you can do for yourself to also help. And it's changing your mindset, right? Developing healthy habits. It's a little bit of faking it till you make it sometimes, right? I love to tell people about laughter yoga, because you may not feel happy. You may not feel like laughing, but it's so important to have those happy hormones flooding your bloodstream. So laughter yoga, if you don't know what it is, has nothing to do with actual yoga. Laughter yoga is the practice of simply laughing out loud until you are actually laughing for real. So it's like fake laughter. And if you're a laughter yoga practitioner, you learn these silly moves and these things to say. And it's like, ha, 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 ha. And it seems really silly and really fake. But eventually, when you're doing this with a group of people, whether it's in person or even virtually, you begin to truly laugh, because it's so silly and you're looking at other people and hearing other people, and you start to laugh for real. And even the fake laughter tells your body to turn on those happy hormones and to flood your bloodstream with all of those good hormones that are immune boosting and therefore healing. So that's some of the stuff that you can do to help get yourself out of that depressive state. And you do need to acknowledge that you're having sad feelings or grief or anger, but you can also work on things that help you to overcome those feelings or just counterbalance them.
But you have to enforce a little bit of effort, because depression may come because it's easy to think about these things when, especially maybe the first week of getting diagnosed, right? And you maybe looking through online and seeing the prognosis and whatnot, and you're seeing all of these information, and you're so overwhelmed with information, and a lot of things just comes into your mind, and you're just very much overwhelmed. And how much is support such a part of this healing process? Like, How do you cultivate that support around you?
Yeah, support is huge. And I do want to say just one thing because you mentioned prognosis. And yes, when we get a diagnosis, our tendency is to get online and to look for information and to research. I like to tell people, and I believe this was a Deepak Chopra quote, believe the diagnosis, not the prognosis. So you can get a diagnosis. It can be confirmed by a biopsy, etc., different tests. The prognosis, that's an educated guess. And that's based on statistics for the average person. None of us are average, right? So don't believe the prognosis. I like to tell people, like, stop your doctor. Don't let them tell you what the prognosis is. They're not God. They do not know if you have 3 months or 3 years or 30 years to live. They can't possibly know that. They are making their best educated guess based on their experience with average people and the statistics, etc. So it's best not to focus on a prognosis and to focus on health and healing. So then you can get really overwhelmed in those first days and weeks and even months. Many of us that have a diagnosis are constantly flooded with information about it, and we're researching and we're striving, and we so much want to find a cure. Not everybody's going to find a cure, but you can be healed. Some of us are healed and cured. Some of us are healed. Some of us are cured and not healed. So you need to decide for yourself what you want the rest of your life to look like, and focus on living into that life that you want. Don't focus on the disease and the diagnosis and the sickness, because what we focus on is what we get more of. So focusing on health, focusing on optimal health and our best life, right? That's the thing that can really help. Now, there are a bunch of other things that go into it. And you asked about support. Support is huge. So here's where I'll mention Radical Remission and Radical Hope. These are books that were written by Dr. Kelly Turner. Radical Remission was her first book, New York Times bestseller. And Radical Hope was the second book that came out in 2020, which was an update. In Radical Hope, there are 10 healing factors that over 1,500 survivors utilized to overcome a dire prognosis. And these people, in the first book, in her original research of those 1,500 people, what she learned was that conventional medicine failed people. They went home on hospice and they figured out how to find remission. Or maybe they started out completely alternative to begin with and they found remission. In the second book, she added a third category of people, those of us that utilized an integrative approach to find remission. And so what she learned was that these survivors were utilizing 75 different healing factors. 10 of them were common among every single one of those 1,500 people. So those are the 10 healing factors that she outlines in the book, tells people more about. These are lifestyle changes. Only 3 of them are physical. So there's changing your diet, exercise and movement, and herbs and supplements. So those 3 physical factors are what people tend to start with. But we need to remember that from the mind, body, and spirit approach, there are emotional and spiritual factors that come into play as well. And I'll go through the rest of them for you if you want, but I want to touch on the social support. That's a huge factor for people. So social support was something that Dr. Turner found all of the radical remission survivors were utilizing. And they had to learn to ask for and receive love and support, right? And so many of us are good at giving love and support, but not necessarily receiving. Because in our culture today, people are all about, I got this, I can do it on my own, I'm strong enough, I don't need any help, right? And they think of asking for help as a weakness. Absolutely not. And I think during the pandemic, we probably all learned how important our people are, right? How important it is to have that support and to be around people, to be able to have touch and hugs and to just really relate to others. And honestly, we're social creatures, right? You go way back to the beginning of time, and we've always lived in tribes. We've always relied on each other for help and support and to be able to survive. So what the independent studies that Dr. Turner cited in her books were things about social support, was that it's more important to have social support than it is to have a lifestyle that does not include smoking, drinking, eating fatty foods, etc. So those things combined, in other words, are less important to your health than social support. Now, I'm not proposing that anybody go out and start smoking, drinking, and eating bad food. What I'm proposing is that you make sure your social support is at the level that you perceive it to be helpful. You can have one really close friend, and that's your social support. You could have one four-legged furry friend, and that's your social support. Or if you're like me and you're an extrovert, you might want 30 or 300 friends to be your support. So it's about your perception of what's the right amount of support for you. But having support, receiving that love and support is the thing that's really key.
We'll touch upon the other 9, but you talked about conventional. I imagine that everything that the patient does can have a direct impact on their result, right?
Absolutely.
So how important is it to have the right team around you? And what if your doctor isn't supportive of what you want to do and what path you want to take? What's your tip for anyone that's listening right now?
Fire that doctor and find a new one. You need to find a healing team that's supportive of you. This is actually another one of the factors, empowerment. And we describe it as being the CEO of your health. So think of yourself as the CEO sitting at the head of that boardroom table. And along that table, you've got all of your healing team, your experts, your conventional, your integrative, your alternative practitioners, your acupuncturist, your herbalist, whoever it is, whoever makes up your team should be sitting at that table. They should all be giving you their expert opinion, but it's their opinion and you're the one that makes the final decision for what's right for you. So when you have a conventional doctor who doesn't agree with your approach, who doesn't honor you as an individual, making your decision for what's best for you, you might want to think about finding a new one. And it's always good to get a second, even a third opinion. Now, you might have found a conventional doctor who is the expert on your diagnosis. And that's a valuable person to have on the team. So you might want to keep them on the team instead of firing them. But you might need to work on having a little bit different relationship with them. And it might be difficult. You might never get that person to really believe that what you're doing is the right way. But it's worth trying. It's worth being honest with that person about what you're going to do and how you want them to be a partner with you. And I believe it's really important that your healing team each be a partner with you and recognize that you as an individual know your body best. And so you then might want to go find a naturopath or a integrative oncologist or an integrative doctor that specializes in your diagnosis so that you can balance out your team and get these different opinions. Now, I do have lots of clients that have not told their conventional oncologist the other things that they do because they just don't want to have that conversation or have to deal with it. Or sometimes our conventional doctors fire us. They're like, okay, if you're not going to do this, I don't want to be your doctor.
Yeah.
And we have to respect our conventional doctors for the expertise that they have. So they are experts in their field of expertise, but they're not experts on us. And they're not trained in the alternative approaches. They're not trained in nutrition. They're not trained in all of that other stuff that we now are learning about and want to utilize. So it can get a little difficult. And then it requires you to be managing all of this yourself. And I do recommend that on your healing team, sitting at that boardroom table with you, is a friend or family member or multiple friends or family member that are also helping you, that are advocating for you, that are helping you do your research, that are taking notes for you and helping you remember what all of these experts are telling you. And maybe there's somebody that you know and that loves you that can sort of be your case manager for you. But not all of us have that luxury of having that type of person. So it can be difficult, but it's worth really being that active, empowered patient, because the studies tell us that being active, as opposed to being a passive patient who just follows doctor's orders, nods, and goes along with whatever they say, gives us a better outcome. Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, being active. So if you're passive, if you're feeling helpless, right, you're getting closer to that even depressed state,
Right.
where you feel helpless. You feel like there's nothing that's ever going to work. You're dejected, you're depressed, you're hopeless and helpless. And that does not help your body build a stronger immune system. Remember, I told you about the whole rest and repair relaxation response versus the fight or flight response, where you're in a stress response. You need to be in that relaxation response. You need to be in rest and repair in order for your body to heal. So if you're stressed out and you're hopeless and helpless and you're never getting the happy hormones, the laughter and joy and love and empowerment, those are the things that flood your body with those hormones that are going to build your immune system. So the opposite is flooding your system with the stress hormones, the cortisol. That's the stuff that keeps us from healing.
The most important thing that you said there is you said that your doctor isn't trained in nutrition, and that gives you an informed decision to make, right? Like, okay, what's my next move? Maybe I should hire what should they hire, for example?
That's where you go find somebody a naturopath or a functional nutrition coach. And depending on your diagnosis, so when I talk to people with cancer, it's like, go find somebody that's an oncology nutrition coach or a functional nutrition coach or a functional doctor, somebody else. There are nutritionists that specialize in oncology. But I want to warn people that when you go to a nutritionist or a dietitian through your hospital or medical system, they're not trained necessarily in the type of nutrition that's going to be the most supportive. So they're kind of like your conventional doctor. Their nutrition training is really more about just eating a balanced diet, and they're not trying to help you cut out sugar or carbs or dairy, or so it is some work to find the right kind of nutrition coach that really wants to help and support you in building your health back up. And those conventional nutritionists and dietitians also can be helpful, but they may not take it as far as you want to take it. So they're probably not going to be the people that can talk to you about ketosis, right? And doing a metabolic approach to your diet.
As a health coach, how do you talk to your clients about the diet piece? And what I imagine was the biggest piece, right? What sort of different reactions do you get?
Yeah, it's not the biggest piece. If you look at that radical remission research, it's one of 10 factors. But it is a factor that most people start with and feel they can have more control with, right?
Yeah.
But I do encourage people not to make it the biggest thing, because you can really stress yourself out about what you're eating and get all stressed and worried about, oh my God, I just took a bite of something I shouldn't have, and what's this going to do to me? Don't stress out. It is important, and it is okay to just start taking baby steps to make changes. You don't have to do it all at once. Small changes over time really do add up to being very helpful. For me, I decided to do a sort of jump right in and do it all at once, diet change. Now, in the months previous to my diagnosis, I had just happened to undertake the Real Food Challenge. So I had cut out processed foods. When I got the diagnosis, I went ahead and said, okay, I'm cutting out all meat, all dairy, all alcohol, all sugar, and all wheat and really changing my diet. So I was left with vegetables. And it took me a few months of really struggling to figure out what to eat and how to eat, and being in tears over, oh my God, there's nothing I can eat. And what do I do? I had to learn. And so I recommend that you go a little bit slower, right? Save yourself the stress and the trouble of it, because food does matter. But again, it's 1/10 of the radical remission research. It's one factor out of 10 that gets us into remission. And when we talk about it from the radical remission perspective with clients, it's like, okay, what can you change? What's the one small thing you can change today? And the best approach is to start with, what can you add to your diet? How can you add more vegetables to your diet and start to crowd out the processed foods, right? We're so into the processed foods. You go to the grocery store and everything's processed and all this packaged stuff. And there's a lot of ingredients in there that aren't good for us. And our processed foods contain a lot of chemicals and additives and food coloring and sugar. And we need to start to look at, how can we eat more real food? And by adding in more vegetables, you are starting to crowd out the other things. And then you can, over time, learn and start reading the ingredient labels and start to figure out, okay, how can I make this myself instead of buying it? Or there's a lot of options now in the grocery stores for healthier items that are eliminating the additives and the chemicals and the colorings and the sugar. It's a little more expensive. So you might need to learn how to make some things on your own.
Let's talk about another factor here. How about release the negative? I like that.
Yeah. It's called releasing suppressed emotions,
Okay.
but it is really about releasing the negative, the suppressed emotions we've been hanging on to. And that's about the stress and the fear and learning to forgive and back to the trauma, right? We've all had little traumas. What are we hanging on to? Some of us have had big traumas, and we need therapy and help in releasing those traumas. Anything that you're hanging on to from the past is going to keep you in the past. You won't be in the present moment. So you need to learn to release your emotions. And it goes for the good emotions too. And we talk about good emotions and bad emotions. None of them are good or bad. They're just emotions. They're all messengers. They're all here to tell us something, right? So there are low vibration emotions like negativity and fear and sadness. And then there's the high vibration emotions, which we want to experience more of, right? The happiness and the joy and the love. But when it comes to releasing suppressed emotions, what the radical remission research tells us is that nostalgia is a big piece. People who are hanging on to their past. If you think about the sort of standard American vision of the high school football captain, right? We've all seen movies or heard songs about the high school football captain. If he hangs on to that into adulthood and he can't let go of the fact that he's no longer the high school star football captain, if he's still living in that, or the woman who in her youth was a ballerina and now she's older or she's got a diagnosis and she can't be a ballerina anymore. If you can't give up on that nostalgic, I want to be that, I want that again, you're still living in your past. Now, having memories of your past is not a bad thing, but hanging on to the nostalgia and pining for what used to be and wishing that it was still that way are the things that keep you stuck. And what you want to do with releasing suppressed and negative emotions is make sure that nothing's getting stuck. And if you think about traditional Chinese medicine, they talk about emotions getting stuck in the body so that our qi, our life force energy, no longer flows freely. And we want our energy to flow freely through our body. I also tell people to think about whenever you clench your fists or bite your tongue or clench your jaw, you're hanging on to something. Those are physical signs that you can start to pay attention to, right? To make sure that don't clench your fists and hang on to that emotion. Explore it. Be curious about it. What's coming up for you? Why is it coming up? What's it trying to tell you? And make sure that you feel it fully and then release it fully. Let it go. If you have to, excuse me, if you have to process that emotion later, when you're alone or when you have more time, process it later, but process it. And you can journal about it. You can go kickboxing. You can dance until you're sweating. You can beat the drums. You can beat the punching bag. Whatever it is that helps you process your feelings and emotions, get it out.
If you can stay happy throughout the process, is that the goal, you think?
Well, no, because we're humans. We can't stay happy all the time, right? We are going to experience those other emotions. And so it's good to experience all emotions. What's not good is hanging on to those emotions and never getting back out into the happy, loving, content, peaceful feelings that help us to heal our bodies.
What's the most overwhelming feeling or emotion for you when you were going through it, and how did you sort of overcame that?
Yeah. So for me, with that metastatic diagnosis, I would have to say it was fear that was the most overwhelming and persistent emotion that came up for me. And I definitely had to process it and go back to my therapist and say, I really need some help. I need to work on this. And taking some level of control, being empowered, right? That empowerment factor where I decided I was going to manage the hell out of this diagnosis, that helped me a lot to understand that I did have some level of control. And if I acted as an empowered patient around my health and made the decisions for myself, that gave me more feelings of strength and that I got this, I can do this. One of the strategies that I used, because not only did I feel the fear, but also the anger, and I bought myself a Bozo the Clown punching bag. And Bozo the Clown's kind of a creepy character, right? It's an old school Bozo the Clown, but they make a punching bag that has sand in the bottom of it, and it's shaped like Bozo's 4 feet tall or whatever. And I used to put Bozo the Clown up on the bed because my dog wanted to bite it too. But I would punch when I was angry or mad or, feeling fearful. I would go in there and take out all of my frustrations on Bozo the Clown. And that helped a lot.
Wow.
But also balancing all of those sort of low vibration emotions, that negativity, that fear, that anxiousness, that anxiety, the grief, the anger, balancing it with the happy emotions. So making sure that I was living my life and enjoying my life and doing the things that I liked and finding the people that made me happy and the activities that helped me to have some happiness. So increasing positive emotions is the flip side of releasing suppressed emotions. And when we look at that factor, it's all about just practicing as if you're treating it like a muscle that needs a workout. So 5 minutes a day of happiness can help boost your immune system. And but employing your friends and family to be on your healing team, to maybe even just be the people that send you something funny. They know your sense of humor. They can send you a joke or a meme or text you or send you a video, whatever it is that makes you laugh at least once a day or multiple times throughout the day. And that boosts your hormones. It boosts your immune system. So yes, feel sadness. It's going to be there. You can't escape it. And nobody can be happy all the time, not even a born optimist like myself. I have moments of sadness and fear and anxiety, but balancing it is what's really important.
But like you say, you have to process all of these emotions at the same time. You have to.
You have to process them all at some, right? Like feel them and make sure you're listening to them. I encourage people to embrace the fear, right? Because if you keep pushing fear away and you don't want to listen to fear and you're stuffing it down and you're turning your back on fear, fear's just going to keep knocking, and it's going to knock harder and harder and harder. And like I mentioned, it's important to have fear in your life because it's going to warn you when there's a stranger walking behind you in a dark alley that you need to make sure you avoid. So fear is important. So instead of pushing it away, I encourage people to invite fear to sit down and have a cup of tea. Talk to your fear. Find out what fear wants you to know. Hey, good old friend fear, you're here again. What is it you need me to know? And fear might be just worried because you haven't paid any attention to it. And if you tell fear, you know what, fear, thank you. I appreciate that you're warning me, but I got this. Me, my higher power, and my healing team, we've got this. It's all under control. So don't worry. You go back, rest and relax, but let me know if something new comes up. It's a great conversation to have.
Whenever I see somebody who gets diagnosed and you see them and they're really doing well and they're really not affected by it, you know that they're gonna conquer that because they just have that sense of no fear, I guess, for lack of a better word, right?
Yeah. There's not too many people that have no fear. There are people who have made peace with dying. Yeah. Right? And when you make peace with dying, because ultimately that's what we fear when we get a diagnosis, that we're going to die sooner than we wanted to, sooner than we expected to. To put it bluntly, nobody gets out alive, right? We are all going to die. We are all making our way towards our death. And I think it's really important to learn to make peace with death. And that's hard. Our culture does not have that conversation enough, right? And knowing that it's going to come at some point, it doesn't necessarily make it any easier, but planning for it, being prepared for it, thinking about it can be so much more helpful. I've taken my whole family through the 5 wishes process. So 5 wishes is a document. It allows people to write down what they want around their death. So if you're permanently disabled in an accident, you can't speak for yourself, you've completed this document and you've named somebody to be your advocate so that they can represent what you do want. Like, I can no longer speak for myself, but my family now knows what my wishes are. How do I want to be treated? Do I want every possible medical option utilized to keep me alive? Do I want to be kept on life support, or do I want to be unplugged at some point, right? If there's no hope for recovery, no, I don't want to live as a vegetable on life support. So I can state that. And this document really makes it easy because it asks you the questions and it's just checklists and check boxes and it takes you through the whole thing. And it's a little bit like an advance directive, but it also adds to it the things that are going to make you comfortable, the things that are, who do you want to be around during your death? Who do you not want to be around during your death? How do you want to be comforted? What music do you want played in your hospital room or at home if you're on hospice, etc.? So it really covers everything for you. And I had my young adult sons fill this out. I wanted to know from them, if something happens to you and you can no longer speak for yourself, what are your wishes? What do you want us to keep? Because as their mother, I would be absolutely devastated and would not want them to go.
Right.
I would not want to unplug them, right? But if they don't want to be kept alive in that particular state, I need to honor their wishes, not mine. And if I'm in that trauma of my one of my sons being in a place they can't speak for themselves and I can't think straight because I'm in such grief, I want to be able to look back at what they wrote down as their wishes. And I just think it's so important that everybody think more about that. What's the end of life going to be like? Because we're all going to face it. Not ignoring it
Yeah.
doesn't put it off.
Make peace. You have to make peace.
And
Yeah.
making. Mm-hmm.
How about the strong reasons? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. That's a good one and that's a really good one for people to start with, because if you know your strong reason for living, why you want to keep living, then you're more likely to be able to make the changes you need to make, right? You know your why, so making the hard changes becomes a little easier. So strong reasons for living really is about figuring out what brings your life meaning and purpose. Why do you want to be here? And a lot of people can easily say, oh, for my kids to see their milestones, to see them grow up, or for my grandkids to see them grow up. People that don't have children or grandchildren can absolutely still have strong reasons for living. Some of us have a strong reason around helping others, right? The work that we do in the world, the volunteering that we do, the travel that we do that brings us so much joy, right? I want people that want to tick off one more continent that they've traveled to, somebody that wants to write a book or finish that painting or take their family on a big trip, right? There's so many reasons for living. And what people need to remember is that it doesn't have to be some big, huge thing. You don't have to be a grandiose fame and fortune, Nobel Peace Prize winning type of person. Everybody has meaning and purpose. What you do in your day-to-day life is what you need to look at. You need to go back down and look at the small things that matter most. And it's typically about love and connection.
Yeah, you matter to somebody.
Where does the love and connection show up in your life? And how does that matter most to you? Yep.
Yeah, that's a personal why. You have to have that personal why.
Yeah, because then when it's time to make the radical changes to your diet, you know why you want to be on this earth. So now, okay, I'll make that effort to make those changes so that I have more health.
Yeah, whenever you forget why you're doing it, right? It's good to have.
And my strong reason for living, not only is it my sons and my family to be here for a long time, to see them grow and have children, but also my goal to live to be 100 plus, healthy and sane. I've always had this goal. And so the diagnosis, I kind of went, wait, this can't be. I plan to be here for 100 plus years, healthy and sane. And for whatever reason, I've just known that's what I was going to do. And I still believe that I'll make it to 100 plus, healthy and sane. And my other strong reason for living is this work that I now do, right? To be able to share with other people hope and inspiration and this work, the research that tells us that we can overcome a dire prognosis. We do not have to succumb to the prognosis that conventional medicine gives us. Now, we are all going to die, and maybe cancer will take me out, but I know I am personally already healed. I have had healing along with remission. Now, being a stage 4 metastatic breast cancer thriver, I will probably live with cancer for the rest of my life. But on my deathbed, I will have known that I found healing, because this work that I'm doing, the research that I'm sharing, the education that I am giving to others to help them is healing work that I've been doing now for several years and intend to do forever. I don't need to retire because I love the work that I do, and I'll do it forever.
You know, also you have that calming voice when you talk. It just suits you. Amazing.
Thanks. Yeah.
The way you talk is giving a lot of people hope. Your story, your message, and I believe that you're helping a lot of people right now, obviously, with the work that you do, and just coming on here and talking about your story is and you're so brave too, right? You talk about I'm not as brave as you, right? I can't talk about death the same way like you, but I'm learning too, and mhm,
Yeah, and we're all on a
mhm,
journey of
yeah,
learning and trying to get there. And let me finish my story because and I'll say too about bravery. Everybody has the level
mhm,
of bravery, right? It's just about doing what you have to
yeah,
do in the face of fear. And I didn't choose
mhm,
this, and I don't think of myself necessarily as
yeah,
brave. I think I've just done what I had to do
yeah,
to because I have reasons for living and I want to stay on this earth for as long as I can. And so I'm making these healthy habits, these changes, this lifestyle, so that I have optimal health and can be here for a long time. But I'll finish my story, the really inspiring part of it, right? So I got the metastatic diagnosis in 2014. I did start the conventional meds to block the hormones, and I made all these lifestyle changes. Some of them I did cold turkey, others it's taken me months and years to learn, and I continue to deepen all of these healing lifestyle factors that I learned about with the radical remission research. And I believe those lifestyle factors have made the biggest difference for me because with my conventional treatment, the meds that I take every month, the injection that I get every month to block the hormones from feeding the cancer, I have like no side effects. My outcome is so much better than other people's that are the standard, right? The average person that I know because of lifestyle changes that I have not only overcome the diagnosis, but have overcome the side effects that a lot of women are feeling on the same drugs that I'm on. And within 3 months of my diagnosis, I knew things were changing. I could tell my symptoms were receding. And by the time I went in for that 3-month follow up scan, the cancer was stable. It was arrested. I like to say we arrested cancer. It did not grow anymore. And the way I found my cancer was that it grew in such a way in the bones that it was closing off the opening of a nerve pathway. So we have bones in the lower spine, the nerves pass through those bones, and the cancer was actually filling in the hole that the nerve path passed through. And so I knew it was actually even receding because my symptoms, my leg was falling out from underneath me from that pinched nerve. My leg was numb, and those symptoms were receding. And then the scan showed stability. And when you look at a bone scan, you can't really see it receding, but it's like, okay, it's not growing. That's good news. And continue on for the next year and a half, my scans remained stable. My leg continued to improve. It was no longer falling out from underneath me, and the numbness continued to recede. And so I felt really good about that. Now, I did get a liver tumor that popped up about a year and a half into this metastatic diagnosis. And that set me back. But I switched from a conventional oncologist to a integrative oncologist and found a partner in the mind, body, spirit medicine that I wanted. Somebody that believed that diet and exercise and herbs and supplements and spirituality and mental, emotional, all of that made a difference in the healing. And that particular doctor changed up my conventional protocol a little bit, supported me and gave me extra around the mind, body, spirit. And within 6 months, that liver tumor was fully resolved. And I've seen no sign of cancer since.
wow,
So I've been 7 years now with stable, no evidence of disease. So 7 years in remission from metastatic breast cancer.
that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy about it. I feel very blessed. And again, I feel like the lifestyle has made a huge difference because so many women, as I mentioned, take the same meds that I do and they feel terrible
Yeah.
on them. They feel like they can't even continue the
Mhm,
meds because they're so debilitated. Me, I got no side
mhm.
effects. And I think it's the healthy lifestyle that's made my body strong enough to overcome all of it.
That's special.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I can do it and all 1,500 of these people
Yeah.
that were in the radical remission research can do it, then anybody can do it. it does take work.
Yeah.
It does take effort. And sometimes it gets hard. And sometimes you meet external
Yeah.
resistance and internal resistance. But it's
Yeah.
worth continuing to look at what can you change about your lifestyle? How can you change your mindset? How can you allow healing to happen in your life?
And you need that somebody to tell you, like the outside perspective, to see what's going on, especially somebody that walk that shoes, right? Especially when who's qualified to work with you? Now, who do you work to?
Who's qualified to
Yeah.
work with me as a coach?
As a
Or yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I as a holistic cancer coach, I mean, I specialize in people with cancer just because I know what it's like, right? And I can have empathy, not just sympathy. But I have worked with people that have had other diagnoses. And the radical remission research has helped other people with autoimmune disease, with MLS, with ALS, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of things that people are using these 10 lifestyle factors to really help them overcome. And I do like to help people on a healing journey that are ready to make changes. So anybody that wants some support, I'm not going to tell people what to do. What I'm going to do is help them, guide them, walk along beside them, because nobody knows you better than you. So just because I did something doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. But what I can help people do is uncover what's going to work for them. I can help them uncover their strong reason for living and figure out what changes they need to make. I'd like to meet people where they are. We all start from someplace different, right? You've already, looked at your diet, right, Lorenz? And I don't need to help you necessarily with food, but maybe I could help you deepen your intuition or increase your positive emotions or maybe deepen your spirituality. Those are also factors that we didn't talk about, was intuition and spirituality. And so I can also dig in with you on fear, right? If fear is what's holding you back, that's a big one. Learning to surrender and allow healing to happen and get out of our own way is something that a health coach can really be useful for.
Where can people find you, Coach?
Yes. So my private health coaching practice is called Health Navigators. My partner Liz Curran and I started Health Navigators after we met during Radical Remission teacher certification. So we were trained and certified in the research of Radical Remission. We're both nationally board certified health coaches, and our practice is called Health Navigators. So people can find us at healthnavs.com. And you can find us on Instagram and Facebook, Health Navigators. And my email address at Health Navigators is Karla@healthnavs.com. And it's Karla with K.
Yes, thank you. And we'll link everything down in the description box below so you guys can check that out. Also, if you can talk about a little bit about the Cancer Revolution Summit happening in September 21 to 26.
Right. So Cancer Revolution, Liz and I were interviewed for that, talking about the radical remission healing factors. And there's tons of other experts that are going to be a part of that summit. And it starts on the 21st. I believe our interview is one of the first ones. So check it out. Check out all of the great speakers that are going to be there. And you'll put that in the show notes too, so people can link to it. Because you want to sign up for that. You want to get on board so that you get all the emails to let you know who's speaking when. And we really go into a lot more detail about the radical remission research in that interview.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Karla, for sharing your story here on the Ketones and Coffee podcast. We really appreciate you being so gracious of your time, of course, and sharing the 10 factors that helped you thrive after your diagnosis. And hopefully we can help somebody out there that's walking these paths, that it's not an easy path to take, but something that gives a lot of people hope today. And so thank you so much, Karla, again, for sharing your story.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Bye-bye.
Subscribe to the Ketones and Coffee podcast today and never miss an episode.